Alright, so we're evaluating expressions in problem structure. So one of the things we just want to review is reading composition. So terms in an expression, when we read the composition, we want to be able to figure out and identify the separate terms in the expression. So we're going to identify individual terms. And remember, they're separated by a plus or minus outside of grouping symbols. So when we do this, remember we use dotted lines to separate the terms, and it helps us keep those terms separate throughout the process, right? Now we want to, the second thing is identify the individual factors. So within each term, right? And again, we're looking for factor operators and things like that. Now, these two pieces, the terms and factors of the expression, are called the components of math. And you'll hear me, excuse me, you'll hear me say that as we go through this. So again, just like in English, we want to be able to identify words and letters. In math, we want to be able to identify the individual terms and the individual factors. And eventually, this is going to help us evaluate and provide our problem structure when we evaluate. So let's just practice. What's the composition of the following expressions? So I'm basically reading composition here. And when I do that, the first thing I look for are the terms. So the terms are separated by plus or minus outside of grouping symbols. So again, we're using blue dotted lines. So we have two terms. We have one term here and one term here. So as we look at the terms, the next thing is the factors in each term. Well, -7 is actually considered that term, but it's also a factor of that term. The factors of the second term starts with -2 times, so one of the factors is -2, so I'm going to use parentheses to represent that factor. And then the other factor is the grouped expression, this 3 plus 5. So you notice this one, this term has two factors. And again, we're not evaluating yet, we are just reading the composition. If we look at the next one, so to read the composition, I'm looking for the separate components. So again, I'm going to identify terms. And to do that, we can recognize the plus or minus outside of grouping symbols. So here's the first one, and right before the -7, this would signify a new term. And then plus is outside of grouping symbols, so that signifies a new term. The negative sign between the 9 and the 3 here is in the absolute value sign, so I can't count that. But this next plus is outside of grouping symbols. So for this expression, you see we have 4 terms. Each term then, let's look at the factors. So the first term, -2, this would be times the square root. So -2 is a factor. And then the square root of 16 is another factor. So again, the negative 7 is the only term. So negative 7 would be that factor. And then the absolute value signifies a factor. So this term would have a factor of 5. And then the absolute value of 9 minus 3, or 9 and negative 3, would be the other factor. So that has two factors. And we have a power. This is a factor operator, and you notice the parentheses. So with this power, we could think of this term as having a factor of negative 3 and a factor of negative 3, or two factors of negative 3. So again, we want to be able to identify factors in each term. And the way I write this, I use parentheses or the factor operator to signify that. So again, everything is in red, dealing with factors, and then the terms separated with blue. So again, we're just practicing how to identify factors. So in the next section, or identify composition, right? Identify components in an expression. Again, this is going to lead us into how to evaluate. In the next video, we'll show that.